Moscow. Listen to me from the south. I'm the one they call Sam. But in a clever sort of way, this music could be working, waiting, and learning, and planning. Hey, I can hear this sick and raise the dead.
Welcome back to Animal Songs, a story set to music, written and performed by Jamie Holcomb. The more things change, well, how much of ourselves does stay the same? Strange to understand. Sit back, relax, and watch the show in your head, on screen, through the dots of your own eyes. Invisible, traps, prepared, everywhere. It waits. Fate. Spider. Tiny wings beating, Violet squatted over a hole from which he pried handfuls of dry earth. His pink features were wrinkled into a scowl, though his thick primate lips twitched, flickering towards a smile. Turning his head to the left, he coughed, and he raised a stained hand to his forehead, wiping away drops of sweat from his brow to leave a dark streak in their place. They say that nothing grows in the wasteland, but they, whoever they think they are, have never been stranded out here. As he sank his hands into the ground again, his wings flapped faster, in rhythm with his shoulders as they flexed against the straps of his burgundy vest. Aha! His hands disappeared below. Pushing with both woolly legs, he pulled. There was a dark cracking sound as he tumbled backward into Peter. They fell in a pile, and Violet rolled over the rag boy, who groaned. The chimera stamped his hardy hoofs down and rocketed upwards. Above his head, he held a tiny yellow tuber. What did I tell you? He danced a partnerless quadrille around his splayed companion. Peter pushed himself upright and squinted against the sun at the triumphant shadow. I always had faith, Peter said, but that's hardly enough for the four of us, and an awful lot of work. Violet stood still and glared at the seated urchin. He pointed to his hole. Start digging on the other side if you want to eat. Peter laughed, and Violet rolled his eyes. Crawling, striding, they each began new pursuits on the right and on the left of the first site. As they dug, Peter said, "How long were you lost out here?" "Long enough." Violet pried forth huge handfuls of dirt, while Peter scratched at the surface. The chimera sighed. "I guess it was harder when I was a boy." He stopped digging and contemplated his dark-stained hands. He wiggled 10 ordinary fingers that tapered in slightly bulbous pads, clear-nailed, with sturdy tendons and delicate veins webbing beneath the tanned skin. "Hands are about the only thing that didn't change," he muttered to himself. Peter turned away to respectfully mind his own progress. They worked in silence until Violet continued. "My family was traveling to the town. I grew up somewhere west of here. Don't remember much. A lot of sand, spiky plants. I was just a kid, an infant. My dad wore a wide, round hat that blocked out the sun. My mom was red. Her hair, her clothes. Anyway, I think I fell. I think it was an accident, or maybe I got curious. We were all loaded up in our wagon. Then I was on the ground out here, alone in the dark." "How long?" Peter asked again. "Years, it seemed that way. At first, I followed the road. Hope only gets you so far. Eventually, you have to understand that you're alone. All that matters now is survival. You need to eat." His hands vanished again. With the full strength of his bovine legs, he pushed and pulled and tumbled back to lay on the ground. With an outstretched arm, he extended another golden tuber towards the sun. In one bestial cartwheel, he flipped from his back to his feet. He slipped the second tuber into the front pocket of his vest. "Better start digging," said Violet. As Peter clawed at the hard-packed earth, Violet sidestepped to begin a new conquest, smiling. The only person I knew in the city happened to be the only classmate I remembered. Possibly then the streets were crawling with forgotten phantoms from my twice-tread cycle. Peters was the only name in my phone that stuck out to me through my haze. He lived on Convent Avenue above 125th Street, and he was looking for a roommate. Peter was probably one of the world's greatest harpists. The pool of contenders is shallow. The harp is expensive and limited in its traditional application, so the instrument is not a wise investment unless you're going to become one of the world's greatest. He kept the hulking black case in the small gray common space, where it stood like an imposing angel. "For auditions, they usually provide one. Otherwise, I'll need your help carrying it," he said when he showed me the place. Our rooms were on either end of a narrow hallway, with a yellow-tiled kitchen and the common area between them. That's the only rule? That and pay the rent. And write me an opera. For the harp, you mean a concerto? No, it's got to have a plot and a big harp solo, a theme. Orpheus in the underworld. My God, you really are the world's greatest composer. That is absolutely not true. It wasn't. Besides, it's going to sound awful. I moved into the room behind the harp, and Peter and I fell into a routine. He worked most days at the Fifth Avenue Apple Store, the famous glass cube across from the Plaza Hotel, Catter Corner to Central Park. I read and reread my Persians, spent hours sifting through an index of Chinese characters, and was introduced to marijuana by a friendly woman at the bodega around the corner. If I had $10, we'd shake hands, and I'd come home with a plastic baggie of green buds. At first I was curious. At this point, what did I really have to risk? It turned out that smoking slowed everything down, which made it easier for me to examine my modeled tapestry of experiences. I could pull at each thread and consider the detailed structure of the interlacing fibers. I began to recreate the wizard's compass. Returning to cold, confusing everyday thought became progressively more painful. By the time Peter would return home at night, I would be lost in thought. At first we would sit in the common room and talk about the future. He might remind me about some classmate, but I would redirect the conversation towards more effervescent matters. Did he have any theories about reality? Peter was a steadfast Lutheran from the Midwest. Cling to that rock, I told him, and he laughed. This line became my repeating refrain until one night Peter asked me exactly what I meant. What does anything mean? I said. Listen, man, I'm concerned about how much you're smoking, and I am concerned about much greater problems. Don't you need to work? I have $1,000, but in a month, I'll become something else. You don't understand. I'm close. You want to see my rock? It won't make any sense to you. Half of it's in Chinese. He laughed and I rolled us a joint. We talked about music, and I did tell him a story from the Persians about the colloquy of birds and their quest for the phoenix. That would make a great harpera, said Peter. I shrugged and waved him off. I'm going somewhere spectacular. Meanwhile, Tangi was staring at the sun. With her left hand, she bent her hat brim to shield her eyes, and with her right hand she pointed, counting something invisible. Warshaw lay on the ground, head propped on one hand, watching the girl and aimlessly pinching particles of dust, which he released into the wind. Tangi stepped around him, marking a line with her polished saddle shoe, pointed just below Warshaw's nose. The man frowned. My, what shining shoes you have. She ignored him and went on drawing her line. This way's east, she said to the sky. But of course, the sun never lies, said Warshaw, as he rolled over onto his back. His pale face was already tinted a subtle pink. He put a hand to his cheek and sighed. I will be black by nightfall. Do you believe in dragons? She was still looking to the sky, a hand bending the brim of her hat, with her back to the prostrated gentleman. He considered her long dark hair, tangle-free and glossy, and her blue overall dress, suspiciously spotless, like her white blouse. I believe in nothing, except witches. Now she did turn to look him in the eye. Her face was soft, childishly chubby, and her sharp golden eyes conveyed an innocent fear. Warshaw sat upright and patted the ground. She obeyed, sitting opposite him, but she turned to face away, pouting. The world is full of monsters, said Warshaw. Was she a witch, or was she a very clever woman? Did you see a dragon? Tell me what happened. Tangi bent her legs and hugged her knees to her chest. I had a bad dream. Did you? I also had a disturbed slumber. Was there a dragon in yours? Unfortunately not. This one had big teeth, and it spoke. What did it say? She pointed. Across the plain, from the north, two figures approached. One waved and sprang about, while the other dragged behind the first. Eventually, the shouts became clear. We did it, rang out across the wasteland. Dragons are not always a bad thing, said Warshaw. This one was scary. I'm surprised a dream could have any power over such a brave little girl. She hugged her knees tighter and buried her face in her dress. In your dreams, you're helpless. Oh, that's not true. It feels that way. Not at all. In your dreams, why, there's a perfect story for you, shall I? Once upon a time, there was a princess who was cursed to sleep until true love's kiss. A joke it was, for the witch who put her under the spell believed like nothing that love did not exist. But here is where the story twists, in my land, from the normal path of your twice-told tale. Here is where the princess discovers the land beyond sight. In her sleep, she enters a fairy realm of clouds, and it is ruled over by a great snaking dragon, white as snow. She flies on his back through all the distant valleys of beyond, meeting elves and giants, eating sweet rose apples, dancing with angels. In that realm, she finds a joy most mortals never know. And at the dragon's feast, after years of splendid adventure, she takes a bite of roasted pheasant, and her own lips brush her hand, and she wakes up. Was she sad to leave that magic place? It's funny, she's so full of love that everywhere she goes. But now the boys were approaching, and Tangi jumped up to join their celebration. They tossed tubers in the air, and Peter juggled the vegetables, and Tangi caught the food in her hat. It's funny, Warshaw said again to himself, and he watched the children dance. When I wasn't researching symbols, I was on the hunt for torchlight. The city is a maze. Even above ground, you're still in a tunnel. The skyscrapers are so imposing. Black suited shades surround you, and everywhere the crisp clatter of footfalls reminds you that you're only a boy in a big, important place. I would find the object of my quest. These people knew nothing. The city smells, too. Gasoline, garbage, cooking meat of 1,000 varieties, bodies, and exhaust stew together into an earthy musk that is the pervading presence of the city, a perfume like sweet decay. Everything is in motion. The landscape changes. You're on a sidewalk walled by glass, onyx, marble. You're below ground smelling piss in a stain-tiled cavern. You're in the orange and yellow subway car blasting through darkness while the stark fluorescents overhead flicker like you're in a horror movie. You're on the elevated track among the clouds with nothing but blue sky, the ocean, and the distant Statue of Liberty, her arm thrust heavenward. It was better to search in reality because the internet revealed nothing. That cold screen was good for abstract findings like the Chinese alphabet and constellation maps. It had nothing to say about Torchlight and the Persians. Of them, it only knew that these poems and hymns existed and that they were written in such and such place between this date and this one. To understand the book, I would have to venture into the real world to learn from people with experience. My first stop was a New Age bookstore in Brooklyn. I picked it at random. So far, I'd had very little control over this adventure, so I let my feelings guide me. A big chain bookstore in Union Square was a place of business. A library was a place of learning. What I needed was a den of thieves, the place that supplies a true clairvoyant with her tarot decks, where the only other patrons might be honest Persian mystics. I rode the train downward, across all of Manhattan, up and over the bridge, where I saluted Lady Liberty for the first time. It was as we emerged into the sunlight that I first noticed the stinking man in the corner. Of course, I'd been aware of the huddled form, alone on the last bench by the metal door that led to the next compartment. I had been thankful that his tinge of urine kept the space clearer, so that I could sit alone with my notebook. Now perhaps a sunbeam had awakened him. He started mumbling. I glanced over. He was a black man, middle-aged, dressed in a windbreaker and dirty jeans. It was in the instant that I observed him that he collapsed on the floor. I called out to him. We were alone together. Across from me on the wall, where I'd noticed it on my earlier train rides, the red emergency button winked. Silently I rose, crossed the rocking compartment, and pressed the button. Below it there was a wasp's nest of holes, and from these a buzzing voice asked, "What?" "A man collapsed," I said. Once more we were alone. I considered the man. His jacket had rolled up so that now I could see his exposed stomach, protruding and fleeced with dark curls. Extending up from the waist of his jeans, wrapping around his side, was a garment of his own design, a newspaper held in place with swatches of duct tape. "Pain," he whispered. "Are you all right?" I repeated stupidly. "Lithium. Pain." He said these words several times. "Do you need help?" He bolted upright, face contorted in a broad grin. I could see his few remaining teeth and red gums. "My booty." He laughed and fell flat on his back. My eyes went back to his newspaper article. I understood somehow that it was a bandage. The train car opened and a slim man, black, bald-headed, not much older than me, wearing a blue uniform and a world-weary sneer, marched over to the prostrate beggar. "Get up," he said. The man lay still, mumbling. I recounted the event as best I could. Then the conductor and I stood on either side of the body, looking down as the shaking train descended back into the tunnels. "What happens now?" "The police will pick him up, somewhere down the line." He looked at the man, unaffected. "They'll help him." He was asking for lithium, which is sort of an 1800s cure, I think. I was wrong. It's used currently to treat depression. The conductor grunted. Then he left to return to his duties. The train slowed into the first stop. The doors opened. No cops appeared. Instead, two teenage boys tried to enter. They noticed the man on the floor and started laughing. "What are you doing? Get up." "No, he's okay," I explained. "The police are coming." They looked at me, still grinning. Then they shook their heads and wandered down to another car. "My stop is next," I told the man. The doors closed and the train shook. "Pain," he whispered, and then he said a few more words which I couldn't understand. For whatever reason, I gave him my hand. His palm was hard and it was cold, much colder than I'd expected. His smell was so sour, I couldn't breathe. "It'll be all right. The police will know what to do." There were tears in his eyes. Softly, he sobbed, "Thank you." The doors opened and I stepped over the man onto the platform. I didn't look back. I didn't go above ground. I crossed the stone slab to catch the Manhattan-bound express train. I kept my right hand in a claw for the next hour as I relived the experience. Immediately, I ran from the 125th Street station up the hill to the top of Convent Avenue into our gray building, to the bathroom, where I washed my hand with an entire bottle of soap. Peter came home that night to find me well and truly stoned. I had been brooding over this reality, comparing my recent findings with what I had just learned. There was a knock on my bedroom door, and Peter poked in his head. He took in the image of me squatting on my mattress, which lay on the floor like a dog's bed, contemplating an oversized collection of Play-Doh. He laughed. What's funny? Nothing, that's just a comically large book. I felt my eyes slit, and I swear my pupils elongated. Get out of here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you. Please leave. Sitting in my rocking chair today, what can I tell you about myself then? These things happened, and what I was learning was so piecemeal, the lessons I gleaned from life so precisely focused for such a refined purpose, that it's probably true that I understood absolutely nothing about what really mattered. I told Peter about my encounter. I can change things. What? I can make things better. You don't know what I've been figuring out. I can fix it. Fix what? Everything. Peter, I'm a hero. Because you held a homeless man's hand? Not at all. The only thing I needed was the wizard's power, which is why the floor cracked open and the lights went out. In the other world, bellies full, refreshed and exuberant, our heroes crested a slight incline to discover a lush valley. The rush of the river had been calling them for some time, but nobody had wanted to become too hopeful, so they had simply pretended that the noise was a distant wind. Now they were overlooking clumps of plaster houses with glittering copper roofs. An enormous mill loomed in the distance, its wheels spinning in the crystalline flow of the water. Everyone sighed as they felt the river's refreshing coolness breathe across the valley. Wherever they looked, green grass and yellow daisies greeted them. Stately pine trees guarded the town. The sound of human activity, iron clinking, donkeys braying, chickens clucking, children laughing, men and women calling and singing, the voice of the town resounded beneath the constant flow of the mighty river. Home again, said Peter. He turned over his shoulder to grin at his comrades. Warshaw licked his hand and ran it through his hair, and then he tugged his jacket lapels and proceeded down the hill. Violet looked glum. Get ready for the screams, he said, and he bravely followed the gentleman. Tangi, however, had her eyes on the sky, a hand bending her hat brim low. We made it, said Peter. He spread a hand over the thriving town. Peter, she whispered, and she turned, scanning the horizon. Are you aware that in some cultures they say that dragons bring rain? Peter looked up now. Well, it's perfectly clear. Yes, she popped her pointer finger between her lips and removed it glistening. Something in the wind. Her eyes fell on the rag boy now, his pattern of red and purple stripes, his broad face with its deep-set eyes. He gave an awkward chuckle and flashed his row of square, gapped teeth. Come on, I'll show you around. I dreamed you too. Right, the crocodile in his checkered suit. And here you are. She forced her mouth into a friendly shape, and that was enough for her simple friend. He took her hand and led her downhill, running past Warshaw and Violet, who made a game of chasing after them. Just you wait, she whispered to herself. I'm never wrong. It happened naturally. What motivates any of us? Who crashed the ship upon the shore? And of course, as Tangi would say, why? I fell into darkness so deep and endless that I never felt myself touch solid ground. Everywhere was an impenetrable void. Even my body was invisible. Did I call out to emit no sound, or was I stunned? Was I, the proper everyday me, really in that place? Or was I disembodied, the final form of my gradual dislocation? These questions and similar species of wonder tumbled after each other as I fell through space, until there was an answer, the sharp scratch of a match and a pop of sulfur. Out of the emptiness appeared a single white wax candle. It spoke, and its voice was a woman's, gentle and soothing. My, what a curious mind you have. Where am I, you bastard? I know that's you. The woman laughed. I am? I think not. What's in this place? In the distance I heard that dreadful sound. Drip, drip. Tell me, she said. I felt a cold breath tickle my chin. Who do you think I am? Him. The flame is your golden soul. I know your tricks. Oh my, you are clever. What confidence, what pride, even in my presence. A sparkling glint burst out of nowhere. Above the candle there shined row after row of long fangs. The darkness was smiling. The jagged mouth spoke. Tell me about your project. In an instant I told her everything. Of course. The mouth closed. Now the candle floated towards me. Here, she said, the better to see you with. My hand, clothed in my white hoodie, was extended in front of me in the candlelight. I clutched the wax form, the feeling of power. Oh, to be the man behind the wheel, to bear the torch. These memories flooded before my eyes, and in the darkness I was there once more, on the deck of the night-dark ship, running after silver flashes, on the Mexican patio, brazier blazing, my tiny tuxedoed arms raised before my orchestra. I will help you, she said. I am your humble servant. How could I refuse? Show me how to do it. Teach me how to take control. Of course, but first, a game. I don't have time. They all need my help. I have to fix it. Of course, just a simple game. The world reformed around me, so once again I sat on my dog's bed, the comically oversized philosophy book spread before me. Peter stood in the doorway laughing. Do you think you could help me? I've got to get to Lincoln Center, and they're asking me to bring my own harp. You want me to help you. Me. I rose, and in one long-legged stride I was towering over him. Peter, I said, and now I was the one laughing. I've got bigger fish to fry. I slammed the door in his face. The lights went out once more, to resounding applause. The claps trickled into a dull patter. Outside it was raining. Silently, a lightning bolt illuminated the world. In the purple clouds hung those blank pearls. This has been Animal Songs, written and performed by Jamie Holcomb, produced by Supermoon. Find us on TikTok, YouTube, or at our website, gosupermoon.com. That's GOSUPERMOON.com. You can also find our work alongside many other talented artists at looksees.com. That's LOOK-SEES.com. This concludes the Spider chapter. I wonder what spirit we will meet next. Until then, thank you for listening.
All I got to say is, glory be, the funk's on me. I want to tell you where you go.